Hello and welcome back. Wednesday afternoon, our third session of the day. If you've been with us for all of them so far, hello, thanks for sticking with us. If you've just jumped in for the first time, you're in for a great session and you are also super welcome. This is webinar session number 2, e-commerce innovation, how to wow at first glance online. How's that for a subject? We're going to be unpacking that with a great bunch of people who I'll be introducing to you very shortly. We hope you're sitting comfortably. It's the lunchtime session, so grab yourself a sandwich and a coffee and get ready for some great content ahead. We do love you to get involved, please. So whichever device you're using, somewhere on your screen, you will see a Q&A button. Do please use it and get involved with today. You can ask a question directly to one of our panelists, or you can ask a more general question. My promise to you as the moderator is to make sure that every single question that gets asked gets answered. So there's a challenge for you. So get those questions up on the board, ask them at any point at all. I'm Darren, I'll be your moderator for the event today, and I'll keep things ticking along. Thank you to the Retail Bulletin for having me back to host these events. Always enjoy doing them. And for my sins, my day job is exec chair of a men's skincare brand called Scrubbed. And I also run a consultancy called Williams Harding, which is in its 4th year. So without further ado, let's meet these lovely people on the screens and get them to tell you about who they are and where they come from. So if I may start with you, please, Isla.
Thanks, Darren. Hi, everyone. I'm the head of product at Love Homeswap, which is an award-winning home exchange platform. Before that, I worked on some other great travel experience products, such as Priority Pass and Lounge Key. And my passion really lies in tech that can sort of enable and enrich real-world experiences. And I'm also interested in leveraging membership networks to drive new sources of value in leisure travel. Before moving to the travel sector, I led various digital products in the culture sector, focusing on how tech can help tell some great stories and create new sources of revenue for places like the British Museum.
Great, thank you for the intro, Isla, and we're very much looking forward to hearing from you as the session commences. Katie, hello, who are you?
Hi, I'm Katie Clark. I'm head of industry here at Facebook for retail, specifically in grocery. I've got a 20-year background in retail, and most recently over the last 3 years working at Facebook. Myself and my team work with all of our clients to really explore how they can drive everything through the funnel. Everything from acquiring new customers, retaining those customers, and then actually thinking about utilizing the platform to drive customers into store as well as online. So thanks for having me for today.
You're very welcome, Katie, and thanks for joining us as well. Steve, who are you, sir?
Hi, I'm Steve. I am the CRO for FinderLogic. FinderLogic is an on-site and navigation solution. And I'm pretty sure that during the course of this, I'll explain a little bit of that in more detail. I have, like most people, many years experience in actually helping, customers to be able to create and find solutions for their presence online and how do they communicate correctly. So I feel like I have some good experience and some examples of all the customers I've been working with over the many years that I've been working in this field.
Welcome to the panel, sir. And can I just say also as well, thank you to you and the team at FinderLogic for sponsoring this session today as well. We do really appreciate it. And our sponsors always really help us out. So many thanks for that.
Pleasure.
That's our panel, everybody. I think you'll understand and see that there is a stellar lineup for you over the next 45 minutes or so. So as I said, do get involved and please do use the Q&A button to ask your questions. My dog's around in the background. She's currently enjoying a chew. She may or may not get involved at some point, just to pre-warn you. But in this virtual world that we all live in now, I'm sure that any interruptions are welcome. So partners, kids, animals, and so on are all welcome here in the TRB family. Let's get going. Isla, I'm going to start with you, if I may. In this subject of e-commerce innovation and wowing, how do you balance inspiration, discovery, browsing with the magical conversion?
Yeah, so this is fairly tricky to do. Actually, it's not that simple or that straightforward, but actually it's very crucial to get right. So you need the people to be browsing and to be inspired, but you do also need them to check out, so you can run your business. People often come to our landing pages with a specific trip in mind. So as I mentioned, we're a home swapping business. And as part of our value offer, we need to convince them that home swapping will work for them and that we have homes that would interest them. But we also need to inspire them and sort of broaden their perspective on travel. So home swapping is a very different way to travel, so quite distinct from what people are used to from, booking engines and hotels and the world of sort of set availability and nightly rates. So you need to create a good browsing experience. But there's also a sort of inverse correlation between time spent browsing and the rate of conversion. So through research, we found that this is because people get overwhelmed with options when they're searching or browsing. They're looking at homes, exploring destinations, maybe dreaming about some trips and holidays that they would like to take. Eventually they get overwhelmed and they sort of give up and think, oh, I'll come back to this later. So that's what we have to deal with.
It's getting a slight freeze there. We just had a slight freeze there, so we lost about the last 10 seconds of that.
Oh no, sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, that's better. You seem to have gone back online again. Where
did you lose me?
Quite a far back, sort of 10, 20 seconds. You were just coming out of the overwhelm of choice, and people get overwhelmed and they're thinking about holidays and browsing and so on. And you started to break up just a little bit around then. Okay, so basically what I was getting at is there is that sort of inverse correlation between time spent and conversion. So we wanted to find a way to balance the time our users spend browsing and exploring, but also let them make an informed decision and subscribe to one of our plans. So to do that, we ran 7 to 8 consecutive design sprints to sort of overhaul our acquisition journey, coming up with the ideal acquisition journey that enables discovery and browsing without hurting conversion. So through these design sprints, we found that actually restricting the amount of research, the amount of search results they can see, as well as showing them different possibilities to the specific destination they search for worked best. So basically, we show them a preview of available properties whilst making sure they had an idea of the actual number of homes that we have available in the location they search for. So we restricted the results they could see. So we still had to make sure people were able to browse meaningfully and see stuff relevant to what they were looking for from their next trip. And we also show them adjacent options we felt might be of interest. So people know what they want, but there's always something more you can show them that really inspires them to sign up. So this sort of limited showcase approach increased conversion by 47%, but we will keep iterating and pushing this number. So the key takeaway is if you ask people, do you want to see all the options? They're going to say yes. But sometimes sort of curating their experience and making it a little bit more structured can help with conversion as well. Got it. And thank you for that. Your connection is perfect now. You just had a weird 10, 15 second moment there, and I was keen to make sure we didn't lose any content. Okay. Thank you for that. And I'll come back to you again shortly as well. Katie, hello. It's been a crazy 16 months. I think that's an understatement. Have you seen shopping behaviors change? And what should businesses be aware of to get the most out of the Facebook platform?
Yeah, I mean, I think crazy is exactly the word, isn't it? I think we've all been through a number of emotions over the last I think it was about 18 months now. And when I think about sort of over the last 18 months, the way the global pandemic has resulted in essentially an exponential shift online. So, beforehand, we were very much in the physical world. Today, we're here, not in person, unfortunately. And I think, whether that's schooling, it's not just online shopping, it's schooling. We've all got the battle scars from that moment of having to pivot online. We think about health care, entertainment, everything had to pivot significantly, and e-commerce became sort of less of a convenience, but it actually became a bit of a lifeline for people. So when we sort of think about some of the key behaviors that we've seen change over sort of the last 18 months, sort of I usually love the rule of three, but I'm afraid there's a fourth in here. But thinking about the shift to the digital is here to stay, and I'll talk a little bit more against each point. But just sort of as a headline, shift to digital is here to stay. The roles of store and online have very much blurred, and more so than ever. I think we saw it going that way, but certainly it really has moved into a blurred line now post-pandemic. Loyalty has absolutely been disrupted through a number of different behavioural changes, and I think most importantly, and actually to Ida's point around discovery is happening on social, and I'll talk a little bit more to all of those points. But essentially, when we talk about the shift to digital is here to stay, from an online shopping perspective, we know that in the UK, digital sales now make up about 40% of all retail sales, excluding grocery, which is the highest proportion ever recorded. And even within the grocery sphere, which is an area that I specifically look after, it was about 7% pre-pandemic. It hit an incredible 19% of overall sales for grocers sort of during the height of the pandemic. And even though it has started to settle, Kantar's reporting about 13% at the moment, it does show that the behaviours of those that perhaps were more interested in going into store, which is the majority of grocery sales, were able to get over some of those speed bumps. It was led by duress, of course, because people needed to get their groceries delivered. But some of the things that stopped people shopping online actually were removed and went away. And that really sort of shows the shift in terms of the way businesses have started thinking about how customers can access goods, whether that's online or obviously in store. And then when we think about the roles of store and online being blurred, and what I mean by that is that we're starting to see so many different ways of being able to shop, and when we think about that not being able to get into store, businesses have had to pivot and used our platform to click and collect, buy online, pick up in store has become more prevalent, obviously post-pandemic or during pandemic, as I keep saying post as if we're out of it. Unfortunately, we're not yet. Stores became fulfillment centres. Sort of virtual product visualization and trying on, sort of beauty brands such as Charlotte Tilbury, furniture brands like Made.com. Suddenly the ability to go into a store and trial those things went away. So actually using ourselves as a platform, but obviously lots of other different ways of being able to help customers find new ways of trying that, whether that's from a furniture perspective or beauty or otherwise. And when I talk about sort of loyalty being disrupted, I alluded to it at the beginning, we've seen a lot of moments over the last 18 months where, whether that's a grocery environment or outside of that, people have had to change their behaviours. They were forced into behavioural change because of duress. But actually what that potentially has meant is that those behaviours have remained, and where loyalty may have been with a particular business previously, they've had the opportunity to try new businesses. We've seen 1 in 3 shopping at different retailers or stores or websites, and 79% of them intending to continue shopping with those brands. So I think there's an opportunity there around, we talked today around the removing the friction, removing the barriers, how those behavioural changes have had an impact. It's thinking about those behavioural changes and how you make sure that you keep those customers that you might have acquired during lockdown. And then finally, the discovery happening on social is a really interesting point that Isla makes around, sort of showing too much, lots of choice, sort of being overwhelmed with the amount of decisions to make. And actually, what we're seeing on the platform is that we call it discovery commerce. The traditional method of search was you would go online, you would say I'm looking for X, and then that search result would come back to you. But what we're seeing is through the power of the algorithm, through the power of the right signals being in place, brands and clients and businesses can actually use the platform to show products that customers had not thought of. So rather than you go shopping, the products find you, and what that essentially means is that you have endless opportunities to be where your customers are at any point during the customer journey, using obviously a plethora of formats to be able to target and convert them in the most relevant way. So 4 just sort of key headlines that we're seeing, but lots of opportunities in terms of how you move forward from there.
Indeed, and it does feel like there are there's lots of positives out there at the moment, and there does feel like there's lots of opportunities, and this could be a real golden moment for retailers to bounce back on on the back of unprecedentedly tough times. So yeah, some great examples. Thank you so much, Katie. I will come back to you, take a breather, have a coffee. Steve, you've been waiting very patiently, sir. How are you doing?
Good, thank you.
So there's kind of a question on the back of a thing that's happening for you. So what recommendations do you have for retailers who want to continue personalization when Google stops allowing third-party cookies? And why are they stopping third-party cookies? I don't understand. So maybe you can help unpack all of that into one for me.
Yeah, I think the in general, third-party cookies have become a conversation for a lot of people to talk about whether they are allowed or enabled to, or not consenting to be able to get data from your traffic and the way that you actually move online, right? So there's a whole wave of people that are just making sure that there are specific laws and processes and procedures that are enabling companies to still do things, but in the right way, so that buyers and consumers online can feel like they have specific rights to say yes or no to certain ways of tracking them when they're interacting with certain brands, right? So these third-party cookies, a lot of the time, many solutions have used those where you can actually get data from not just your website, but other websites, and how you track that person moving across the internet. And then obviously present certain things that they may feel is relevant to you when you are experiencing something on your website. So it just helps the consumer or the customer or the prospect know that actually they don't feel like they are being followed as much, but they are consenting to the data that you can and can't track. And this is a huge thing that's happened over time. Safari has done that. Firefox, as a browser, they've disabled these third-party cookies that you can enable. And Google have obviously been talking about this for a while. They had suggested that they would end this in 2022 or 2023, and I think they've now accelerated that movement to try and bring that forward. And so, yeah, I think the overall message here is that consumers feel, especially, like Katie, you're talking about the fact that everyone's moving online. So a lot of people are doing a lot of things that are not necessarily just the luxuries or the nice to haves. Now they're doing things that are of necessity to be able to live every day online because of everything that's happened over the last 18 months. That's accelerated our trend. There was always a trend to move online. We all know that. But this has obviously accelerated that, right? So we're now becoming much more focused on, for a consumer, we're wanting to know that what we are allowing people to track is actually going to be relevant for us rather than everything being tracked. So I think it's a good message that's been sent by Google and other parties to say, hey, we're wanting to protect your ability to be able to choose what you want people to track. There's still workarounds, so I think that the key thing to say is that there are people still doing things that aren't necessarily third-party centric. They're using other ways to store this traffic and this data to use that in your solutions. And I call it workarounds because there are loopholes. We're trying to stop, the wider governance is trying to stop that from happening, but there's still workarounds to make it happen. In certain codings in SQL, you can still keep some of that data and monitor that. And I think that the GDPR conversation is also relevant in this field, because GDPR are trying to stop people from doing these workarounds. So, they're obviously starting their trend to try and make it much better, make the process much more clear, trying to define the rules in a better way for consumers. And I think that those loopholes will continue to be closed down over time. So again, what does this mean for us as people who are trying to engage with our consumers to ensure that we give them the most relevant outcome? Third-party cookies or whatever it may be, they were useful for us because we were able to at least try our best to find a relevant outcome for them based on their historical behavior. So that is great because we were able to come up with hopefully relevant outcomes that could then do a higher conversion. But obviously that's now becoming more tricky. So one of the things that I think we'll see a lot more in the future is that we will try and make sure that our our first party content strategy. So our ability to be able to actually get consent from customers is going to be much more specific and much more driven, and we're going to try and improve that in a dramatic way. So that means when someone comes onto the website, have we allowed them to log in? Have we asked them to, if we can do these things? You know, a lot of the time over the lockdown, you've seen every website you go onto, it's like, will you consent to these specific cookies? And I think it's just becoming more about a consent-based behavior rather than something in the background. One of the things that FinderLogic are doing at the moment that is to try and solve for that is many of these personalization platforms or these search solutions like ours, they use third-party cookies to be able to create a relevant or recommended product to be able to display in a search result or through a navigation guide or whatever it may be. And we've actually taken the approach to change that, and we're changing it to actually include only session data. So it means that we are trying to comply a lot more with what the trend is. In that way, the challenge is to make sure that you're finding formulas and strategies to try and get people to consent and to actually sign up with you online, so that it is easier for us to be able to find those relevant products for you. It
can kind of get bamboozling though, can't it, for retailers to kind of get their heads around some of the compelling content you've just shared, but it's hard to follow sometimes, right?
Absolutely. And I think that there's the confusion around what we can and can't do from a company. And then there's the confusion and trust around what is actually still happening versus what can happen. And so, you know, there's methodologies that companies are trying to find to promote their products. I think if I was to give you any recommendations as a company, I would say you need to start looking to use, first-party consent data in a more effective way in the future. So how do you build that strategy around that? Make sure that actually your whole focus for your consumers is built around that actual logic, rather than trying to create the loopholes. That would be my kind of guidance in that.
Got it. Thank you, sir. Isla, I'm going to come back to you, if I may, as well. Personalizing acquisition journeys. How have you done that to improve engagement and conversion?
Yeah, I don't know. It was really interesting listening to Steve. I absolutely agree. And I think what you want to avoid is doing personalization for the sake of it, with no clear goal and no clear payback for the user, because it's actually slightly creepy and it kind of turns people off. And there's increasing awareness around that now with the sort of discussion like this one we're having. So the way we've used it is obviously by asking people directly in a sort of conversational manner about their home and what they're looking for before we then push them through our acquisition journey. So one thing that we want to achieve through personalization is, so when people come to us, they come very much as a guest. So they want to travel somewhere great. So they do want to leverage their property, but they want to go somewhere great. They want a trip. They want to go on holiday. It's a great, it's a happy product. So what we need to do is sort of gently introduce the idea that they will also host. So they need to put their own house and their own skin in the game in order to benefit from our platform. So in order to do that and to convince them that our value proposition is right for them, we actually use a bit of personalization. This is especially helpful if they've never Homeswap before. So what we do is during our short onboarding process, we ask them a few questions about their home, 2 or 3 questions, where their home is, how many bedrooms, is it their main home, very basic questions, sort of anonymous. We don't ask for their exact address or anything, just the city. And also where they want to go to. And then so we then show them a sort of personalized selection of homes and destinations which we think might be of interest. So relative to the location of their property, we show them homes that might be further afield. So if you are, you have a flat in London, but you want to go to Paris, we'll show you Paris, but we'll also then show you, have you thought about Japan? Because, it does open people's minds up. Oh, there are homes in Japan that I could possibly go to, somewhere where it's very expensive to go to traditionally, you could maybe unlock through using your own property. We also use stuff like closer to home. So during the pandemic, we actually leveraged this quite a lot, where people just got sick of their own houses and they just wanted to swap within their own country, and they wanted to do like long swaps, so like maybe a month working in someone else's home, and so on. And we also do like thematic selections such as like city pad, beach home, ski chalets, etc. But we sort of prioritize all of the properties we show based to match the user's home and requirements. So character of their home, and also the number of bedrooms they have. So if you've got a big family house with 4 bedrooms, you're unlikely to be looking for a flat. Well, you may be, but we're guessing that if we show you homes like yours with the same size, you'll be more receptive. It's also important because people sometimes come to us with anxieties around like, is my home good enough? So we also prioritize homes with reviews, so they can see that social kind of proof of if it works for other members, etc. We don't filter reviews, we just sort of show them as they come in. And we also finally take what we know about their property and sort of where they want to go and estimate the average saving they would have by swapping their home instead of renting, which is a good sort of value drive for people. And yeah, we kind of then try and funnel all of that back into our acquisition journey, so that it's a limited selection and we push people into conversion sort of subtly. The way we figured all this out was, through a bunch of user research with sort of non-members, so people who are new to home swapping. It's hard for us to do this test because actually they have to be open to the idea of home swapping before we can do research with them. It's kind of like, we sometimes joke that it's the Marmite proposition, like you either are open to it and you want people in your home, especially if it's your main home. For second home owners, it's less tricky. So we had to have to be open to that, and we did research with people who are both open to it but aren't members, have never tried it, and also people who are members, and ask them, like, what do you look at when you're trying to find a swap? Like, before you agree a home swap, what is it that kind of clicks and you're like, yeah, I want that? So we're trying to build out sort of like our matching and our algorithms, but we basically do this by quite clearly asking questions and then showing them clear payoff. So showing them how we use that information. And yeah, so we did extensive research. We used sort of one-on-one interviews, prototype testing, color sorting, all of that. So what I wanted to point out was that there aren't really any shortcuts when it comes to figuring out how to personalize journeys. Like, you do need to go through that process of really talking to your users and understanding their pain points, their goals, what kind of gets them excited and what makes them go, okay, I'm going to try this, rather than what you assume, because people are very different and they have different motivations in coming to your product.
That's some brilliant content, and I was just smiling at people being so fatigued in their environment and just desperately needing to just be somewhere different as well. But some great examples there of how you've personalized that acquisition journey. So thank you for sharing. Katie, I'm going to come on to you. One of the words that was being used a lot actually on today's sessions, on previous sessions as well, is the word friction. Now, how can brands reduce friction to move customers from discovery to actually buying something more quickly?
Yeah, it's a really good point. And I think, friction has always been part of the shopping journey. It comes in many different forms, whether that's, in store or online. I think that obstacles put in the way still cause, they still cause problems in terms of moving forward from that sort of awareness consideration and obviously through to conversion, or indeed being sort of satisfied with the experience that they've got. Reducing that friction not only creates better experiences for people, but it also, it helps them, identify with your brand. It helps them understand why, or certainly reinforce why they'd want to come back time and time again to purchase from you. I've spoken just sort of very briefly before around the fact that from a grocery perspective, we've seen people move from categorically not wanting to purchase online. I mean, a prime example is, my dad. He's in his 70s, no interest whatsoever. He wants to go into a store, he wants to pick up his products, and he wants to purchase. He has no interest whatsoever in online shopping. He he was forced during the lockdown to shop online. You know, he was one of the sort of the more mature people in the community that needed to have their products delivered. Now, I think there's sort of two forms of sort of removing the friction, and there's a form of this was under duress, that, you know, he had to go through that route. Has he gone back to in-store? Of course he has. However, there are many more customers that obviously will stay shopping online. Certainly from an outside of grocery perspective, that has become the norm, and the battle, if you like, for you know, brands and businesses to make sure that the entire journey is friction free is key, because, dare I say it, there are very few unique propositions out there. So, you know, you are one of many, and the experience that you provide from start to finish is key. You know, setting grocery aside for a second, we know that back in March 2020, there was a stat knocking around that, you know, sort of like 88% of baskets globally are abandoned, which is, you know, mind-blowing when you think about the value that's probably attributed to that. And when we, you know, dare I say it, we talk a lot, and forgive me for talking about a lot around discovery commerce, but, you know, when we talk about it, everyone is now shopping. Everyone is now on. It doesn't matter whether you're on a mobile, on your laptop, whether you're walking out in the street, everybody is now always shopping, you're always on. And that's where we talk about, obviously, products finding you. And I think, rather than people finding products, and why it's important, even more so than it was before, around removing the friction points throughout the whole journey, is because you as a brand might be being discovered by a consumer, whether it's on our platform or anybody else's, for the first time. We know that users discover new brands and new products every day, multiple times, as those products discover the people on our platform. So if that's the first interaction that you've had, make it easy and make it attractive to then get to a checkout. And that's why it's, you know, I know a lot of this is incredibly simple stuff, but we often forget as businesses that if the website is really slow, or if that product is out of stock, or if that price is now different, or if it's really hard. I've seen something, and you know, you're working with an influencer and you've seen something incredible in terms of what they're wearing, but there's no way of finding out where that top is or where to get it from. All of these add up to effort. And you've got that person for a moment, and the importance of removing that friction, you know, is essentially in the value of that basket that may or may not happen. And when we think about sort of, you know, some of the research by GfK, so saying that, you know, 47% of online shoppers say that the internet is making them more spontaneous and more impulsive in their shopping over time. Like I say, we've moved from sort of going shopping to always being always shopping. So, you know, when we think about how might we, you know, using us as an example, how might you remove the friction from that shopping journey? Each stage there's an opportunity to remove the friction. So from a discovery perspective, you know, users can find products very easily by using product tags. So if you have a product catalog and you have a business that has online product functionality, that you are selling something online, and, you know, tag those products up, whether that's on ads, whether that's on organic posts, whether that's through live video broadcasts, or whether that's through influencers. Make it really easy for people to then see that product and then understand where they can get it from. And then from a research perspective, you know, people can easily browse and learn, you know, more about your product, your brand, your, you know, who you are. You might have a lot of brand values that you want to get through, because that's your USP within the industry or the market that you're in. You know, you can do that through Facebook shops. You can connect, you know, through with businesses to users through messaging services. You know, now, if not more than ever, making that easy in terms of having that conversation through a messaging service to be able to understand product availability, product information, product availability. You know, how do I get this product? Collapse that funnel. At every opportunity, collapse that funnel. And obviously, you know, there are many opportunities for businesses to make sure that, yes, if you have a website, of course you want to potentially click through to that website and click out on and purchase on there. But we do have the functionality, obviously, now where you can check out without leaving the app. That's not to say it replaces a website. It simply incrementally adds value to being able to capture that intent and capture that purchase. You know, and as a summary, sort of, you know, we talk about discovery commerce being an sort of elevated, interactive version of serendipitous shopping experience. We know everything's changed over the last 18 months. We know that there's a whole plethora of things to come in the way that we shop. And it is very much about being there with the consumer at every step and just collapsing that funnel. I just say it again because it's so important that you take those friction and those pain points away, because if you don't, somebody else not very far behind you has already done that. And therein lies the problem. They will go somewhere else because of the loyalty piece that has obviously become so fluid over the last 18 months.
Thank you for that. And I think friction could be a subject that could be a webinar on its own. In a previous panel, we were having a bit of a debate about, good and bad friction as well. Thank you. Very compelling answer. I went on mute for a bit, you may have noticed, because I'm on the top floor of my apartment block and suddenly some men appeared on the roof and started having the world's loudest conversation. And I couldn't quite get to my window to close it. So I went on mute for a bit as well, but I was listening intently. Just what you need, some men on the roof when you're in the middle of a webinar. So thank you for that, Katie, and we'll come back to you for some more. But yeah, I think, Karen, if you're listening at TRB, this whole friction piece is a massive subject, and we can definitely build something out of that in the future, I think. Steve, hello again, coming back to you. How can brands or retailers leverage tech to help support a digital strategy?
Yeah, really interesting question. And I'll start with an example. I love Homeswap. When I first realized that you were going to be speaking with me today, the first thing I did was I went online and I was like, well, what is this? This is interesting. Never really heard of it before. And then put my postcode in, was like, okay, let's go to France. Let's see what I get. Didn't quite come up with the solution that I was looking for, but it was just a really interesting journey. And so, from what you're saying today, it resonates with kind of what our company, as an example, does. Just to give you some comparisons, right? And also then working into how technologies like us can help this part. You talked about your ability to ask questions before you then gave them the relevant outcomes, right? So, and also the other one was maybe suggest France if they've typed in another country, because you can see that the interaction with that user and what you've experienced before, they actually be open to potentially another comparison that could also work, right? And in FunderLogic, as an example, we have these 3 pillars approach. You've got your browse, which is your search, that's a search solution that we provide and offer. You've got your navigation, so guiding people to the right destination. And then obviously, once you've done those 2 elements, you've got your actual discover, which is the results that are coming from the search and the navigation. And we add to that where we talk about shopping guides or virtual assistants. So in your scenario, you talked about having specific questions to be able to make sure that you can tailor the results. We have certain situations in customers that are selling furniture online, but no one really knows what they want. When you go online to a home store like a Next or something, you kind of search something and a whole host of things come up. And one of these websites, it's actually a German website. They ask you a series of questions based on sofas before you even get the results. So that actually the result that comes up is so much more relevant to their user experience and hopefully helps you to convert that person coming online better. And I think that technologies, coming from this example, technologies like us, we have tried and tested formulas. We've got 500 customers that we work with day in, day out that can actually do this straight away. And I think that that's really relevant. I don't know, Isla, if you've created that in-house or if you're using another technology, it doesn't matter your answer, but I suppose the relevancy is if you're trying to deal with that in-house, it may take you some time to develop. You've got bottlenecks, you've got resource limitations, skill sets, whereas a technology like ours, you can almost plug in place immediately and you get a solution that's already available. So your time to value decreases considerably. And you actually start to get results because you're using something that you can integrate quickly. And so I think that, on that, there are technologies that are available for every use case that you can think of on the online world. a good example is FundaLogic, but there's so many other technologies that can do similar things. So you have the opportunity to be able to just integrate and plug in to people like us that can help you solve for specific use cases relatively quickly. The challenge, I think, isn't that there is a technology available. It's what is the right partner? Who is the right partner? And are those partners going to be more hassle than they're worth? Are they going to be producing the solution that they say they're going to be producing? How long will it take to integrate? Some people say it's plug and play, and then it takes a year to integrate. So all of these things, I think, are really the important factor in this question. It's not about whether you can use the right technology. I think most companies today know that there could be a technology out there that they could use. I think the more appropriate question is, which technology and which partner can you potentially work with that actually fits within your ecosystem and your technologies that you already have. And actually there are people that are going to give you the time to value as quickly as possible. And so I think to be able to solve for those questions, it's more about looking and setting up a series of questions or use cases that you know that you need to solve for, making sure that when you are going out and researching which technologies could help, they answer those use cases in the most appropriate way. They then make those use cases live in their demonstrations to make sure that they can actually do it. Because a lot of technologies will say, I can do this, but they don't demonstrate it live, but they say that it's coming, and that's just all just really difficult to navigate. And then the biggest thing, which is the third one, is customers that are doing the same use cases as you. Talk to those customers that are with those technologies to make sure that actually what they're saying they can do, they're actually implementing successfully.
Did you have any comment to make on what Steve just said?
Yeah, I was going to ask something. I absolutely agree with you. And I think one thing that's really, really important is to define your problem that you're solving really well before you either solve it in-house or go and find a third party. So actually spend a good amount of time looking at your data, what's not working, talk to some of your users if possible. Spend some good time defining the problem, taking that problem to either your engineering team or a third party with clear outcomes that you want to see, and then getting kind of buy-in. If you go to people with a vague, I kind of wanted to do this, you're gonna get some poor results.
Yeah, that's amazing, because I would say that more than 50% of the people we talk to, they don't actually know what they're trying to solve for. They know that they have a problem, but they just don't know what they're solving for. And then you go through a process with them and you sign up with them, and the expectation before they sign versus after they've signed as a partner, obviously that becomes distorted, right? So absolutely, you're on point. The more specific you can be with someone that you're talking to, the better it is for them to tell you if they can or can't do it. I think most third parties, or even in-house, they're not out there to try and just say that they can do it, but they can't. They just they're just not giving you they're not getting the right information, or they're not understanding your use case in the best way possible.
Isla, similar to Steve, actually, I wasn't aware of Love Homeswap. So when I heard you were coming onto the panel, I did a bit of research as well. I've got my eye on a converted chapel in the Peak District, which looks amazing, by the way, which came up on my suggested swaps. But if I may ask, I mean, how many active subscribers do you have to the platform?
So we don't have anyone who isn't. So we're a closed group. So we only have people who pay an annual subscription. So there are quite a lot of home swapping platforms out there where you can list for free, and then you sort of pay if you're going to travel. But that creates a lot of dead inventory. So people who aren't responding, they have no skin in the game. So we're kind of close to sort of non-members. I think we're around the 25,000 mark of members. Right. Yeah.
Yeah, I looked at the pricing, and it's pretty reasonable when you think about the benefits of the system, right?
Yeah, it's pretty reasonable. If you go on even one trip a year, it will pay back. Also, the caliber of houses we have is pretty high. So you can actually really kind of get something quite decent. And it's also flexible. So we do have something called a point system, where if you want to come to my house, but I don't really want to come to your house, I can host you from points and I can spend those elsewhere. So I can host a couple of times and then I can go stay in a villa in Bali, which is what I really want to do. That's my current dream.
I am so joining, and I'm so going to that chapel in the Peak District. I'm telling you now, that's one of my absolute promises. Look, we are running out of time. I'm going to stay with you, Isla, if I can, for your sort of closing question. And I guess your model, what you do, must have been pretty hard hit by the pandemic. How did you navigate through that? What tips could you share with people that were also hard hit in other ways?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And to be honest, we were really lucky in that we are a subscription business. So we have annual subscriptions. The way we calculate our revenue, we divide from one user, we divide into 12 months. So we had a certain amount of revenues to back us up. And we have a great community. So people who've been swapping for a while, they didn't just leave because it was a pandemic. It's also not a kind of Airbnb or booking.com. So often people are planning trips for 6 months out. You know, they've got their profiles, they've got all their reviews stacked up. It's a community, they know people, they've been swapping. So retention has been super good throughout the pandemic. People were renewing their subscriptions and the way we do revenue, it just worked out quite well in terms of retention. And we also tried to we tried to adapt a little bit to the situation. So we built some local travel hubs for people to find sort of more local swapping options. And we supported that on site and also in our social channels. And also we kind of did a bit of research because new business was suffering, of course. You know, no one's going to take out a travel subscription in the middle of a pandemic. So we did a bit of research, and when things started to lighten up, we tweaked our business model a little bit, started offering monthly subscriptions for the first time because it's just a lot less commitment. And it actually worked out well. We did it on a sort of trial basis, and now we're looking at sort of potentially building that out as a sort of light or entry level tier, basically. So we did a few things, and to be honest, it's mostly been about retention, and the fact that we are a subscription business really saved us. Now, I don't know if you can apply that to other retailers, but if you can find a sort of alternative revenue source that isn't purely transactional, that's actually quite powerful. And of course, we're seeing subscriptions sort of take off. You know, it's a subscription for everything, for a good reason. It's a very reliable revenue model. So
you kept the customers you did have, and then your pivot to move into monthly pricing, basically.
Yeah, we had to move very fast, and you know, we're not a massive business, so that's a bonus when you've got that. But to be fair, we are backed by Travel and Leisure, so they acquired Love Homeswap a few years ago. So we also had good backing. So I must say that also helped. Yeah.
Well, you've gained a new customer today. I will be signing up for sure. So and thank you for your contribution to the panel today as well. I really appreciate it. Katie, coming to you for your closing question, if I may. Businesses are continuing to adapt, and we've used that word pivot as well. And we've used, you know, about being adaptable and ability to change quickly. That's all great, but how do businesses know their efforts are working?
Yeah, that's a really fair question, and I think it all starts with, and I'll sort of slightly steal with pride, Isla's problem to solve for. Ultimately, we highly recommend with any client that we work with or anyone that's using the platform to any degree. Measurement. I mean, it sounds a pretty basic, answer, I guess, but we strongly advise, and we work, religiously to deliver and work on what we call a learning agenda. It's essentially looking at your business and saying, okay, what are those hypotheses that we believe are true or not true? What are we trying to prove or disprove? I think now more than ever, we've always recommended in having a learning agenda, and they can take many different guises depending on the size of your business, but fundamentally it's about looking at how you're using your marketing efforts across any platform or channel, and really making an educated sort of approach of okay, so if we believe that these type of customers or this type of activity or X, Y, and Z that we're doing currently today is delivering A, B, and C, what is it? What are we trying to change? What are we trying to achieve longer term? Do we have a leaky bucket of acquisition? Do we need to make sure that we're retaining more customers? Do we need to open up into a new market? Can we do that through new creative formats? Do we need to show people reasons to believe through our creative? And we've worked with clients previously where they have a very clear view of sort of 5 core reasons why customers don't shop with them. They are sort of perceptions of things that they don't particularly do well, and yet the truth is actually the opposite. So how can creative play a bigger role within your marketing? How can everything from A/B testing to sequencing of messages to retargeting? There's a whole plethora of ways that you can test. The key thing being is that obviously you take a few of those things at a time, not all of them, identify which are the big bets for you as a business, and then use that learning agenda to be very clear and very mindful around what, as I say, what you're trying to prove or disprove, and not changing that. I heard recently someone sort of say to me, this particular business was looking at it on a quarterly basis, and that's all well and good, but actually making tweaks every quarter, one would suggest that unless you have proof behind the results, you're going to keep pulling too many levers. So sort of start the beginning of the year. It sounds very easy, doesn't it? If only it was. But start the beginning of the year with that hypothesis, or the couple of hypotheses that you're trying to prove. And then be very, very religious in your moving through that process to get to the point where you understand what is being achieved, and then obviously making changes accordingly. All under the mindful eye of obviously making sure things like your signals, your foundations, the things that need to be in place to make things work properly. And I probably sound like I'm being quite generic about everything, but obviously it depends which bit of your plan you're talking about. But certainly from our platform perspective, making sure that all the signals and foundations are in place, because you feed the algorithm with quality signals and they will find you the right people, but obviously if you don't, then that will cause you problems and actually muddy the waters in terms of the results that you're getting. So it sounds probably too simplistic, but time and time again we do always recommend that be very, very clear around what you're trying to prove or disprove, and stay close to that, and stick with it, because if you're changing it, the levers change.
And give it a chance to land before perpetually trying to move on to the next thing. Casey, thank you for your contributions today. When life is more normal, I'm available to be invited for lunch to Facebook offices at any time. It is still the best food court I've seen in any office in the world ever. So I'm always available for lunch. Great to have you today.
Thank you.
Steve, wrap up the session for us, please, sir. Which elements of everything we've been discussing today, which elements will have the biggest impact on customer journeys?
Wow, hugely broad. I know that was a question that I'd probably suggested, so sorry about that, but it is huge question.
We love to finish with a huge question, Steve.
I think that question probably can have its own its own session.
Another own webinar, yeah.
Yeah, so maybe Karen can think about that for September 15th. I think that's when it is, right? So sorry, I'm doing your job there, Darren. So yeah, I have 4 or 5 things that I think would be food for thought for a session in the future. I think one of them is optimizing your UX for mobile. I think it's really important, and maybe I just wanted to share a couple of stats on that. Maybe some people know this, but 75% of unique visitors actually use mobile for web today. Now, it sounds logical because that's the way that the world's going. A lot of people are using their mobiles, but it's surprising how many companies or websites aren't optimized for mobile. And so I think that is something that is going to be super key in the future. I think another stat here I have is that of the top 100 websites in the UK today, only 30% of them have actually transitioned to a unique mobile experience or an optimized mobile experience. So for companies that haven't done mobile yet, just realize that you're not alone. you have a lot of big brands that are still doing the same things and they're still transitioning. So you have an opportunity to be able to maybe get ahead of the competition and actually start doing it in a better way. So that's the first point. The second one I would say is thinking about how you can optimize your website for voice. I know that that sounds strange and probably a huge skeptical question or point here, but I do believe that when you're on a mobile, you have an opportunity to be able to command a search by voice. And I see and hear a lot of companies that are experiencing search queries. You know, you can store the search queries that are coming from your actual search tab, that are looking at the search query results, and they are from a voice, you know, a question that is obviously a voice command. So how do you optimize for that? That's an interesting conversation. I don't think we've really thought that through, even through an Alexa kind of environment, or I think that is something that is incredibly valuable for us in the future as we continue our journey online. And then I think the other thing is, how do you create a user experience that people enjoy? Facebook has done an amazing job, has spent, I don't know, billions trying to invest in how to interact with people on a mobile. And so I think websites should probably follow Instagram, Facebook, you know, a whole bunch of people that have actually done this really well, and where people are used to those social environments and how they are interacting with those people online. Websites should take advantage of those potential UX examples and do the same, you know. So a great example is our technology on the mobile device follows very much a Facebook, Instagram kind of UX feeling, so that a customer comes to your website if you have our solution in place, and their experience is similar to what they are doing most of the time, which is to look at Facebook when they're at work, when they shouldn't be. So I think that those examples are great. So the synergies that you can use from people that are doing things really well will definitely help you in your journey with customer conversions.
Thank you, sir. And by the way, Karen says in the chat that she'll be very happy to have you back as well. So there you go, good news. Thank you for your contribution today as well, and also for Find the Logic for their sponsorship of the session. That's a wrap. That's how an hour whizzes by. To think I was worried about the guys on the roof. I've just had a tweet sent to me, which always shows someone's always having a worse day than you are. So this has been tweeted by a councillor in East London to remind Tower Hamlets councillors not to join an online council meeting with external partners whilst you are in the shower and naked. Otherwise, you might drop your towel on the phone, unexpectedly switching the camera on, and that's a sight that nobody wishes to see. See, so my builder's on the roof, no problem at all compared to what someone's just been going through at Tower Hamlets Council today. On that note, thank you for the last hour. I hope you've enjoyed it. We're taking a small break and we're back with our next session at 2:30. Today's session is invigorating physical store sales post-lockdown. We have a cozy panel of two joining me at 2:30, so do come back for that. But all that remains to say is thank you, Katie, thank you, Isla, and thank you, Steve, for a brilliant session. That flew by, and that's all down to the great content that you provided. Enjoy. We'll see you back hopefully at 2:30. Thanks to my panelists, and enjoy the rest of your day. Take care.
Very much.
Thanks, Darren.